Welcome to DasGeek. This will be my final video exploring the Apple ecosystem. I've spent over 30 days in the Apple ecosystem using everything from an Apple Air 2020, a Mac Mini 2020, a MacBook Pro 2016. I've had the iPads, the iPhones, we've done it all. And I can tell you that there are a ton of things that I learned about the Apple ecosystem and even learned some new understanding and appreciation for how mature this operating system, specifically their convergence capabilities, are in Apple. I've also found a ton of similarities between Apple and Linux, and being that Apple's kind of the second distant cousin to Linux, there's a lot of similarities that I wasn't expecting to be there, but were, especially when you couple in things like Homebrew and other stuff. A lot of the commands that I'm used to utilizing in Linux terminal also work perfectly in the Mac world. I'm always impressed by the beauty of the Apple products and the fact that in many ways they couple some of the highest end products, high end screen, high end storage, high end RAM inside of their devices, high end speakers, which is a big one and a lot of laptops fail in. They put cheap junk speakers, but when you get an Apple device, whether it was the Air or the Pro, you get this nice keyboard, it's backlit, beautiful screen, nice frame, not a lot of flexibility in the keyboard itself. Everything looks really well designed, and the premium parts that they put in it means that you would have usually an optimum experience, except for the fact that their engineering is terrible in how they put it all together. I think that the designers come to them, I'm guessing, and say, hey, we've made it an atom size thinner. And the engineers are like, we can't fit all of this stuff in there. And they're like, I know, use rivets and glue and just glue it all and rivet it all together. And there you go. So they've got these great things like a beautiful device, and then they have really nice components, but the way they put it together purposefully so you can't repair it, and to fix issues that create bigger issues, like we're going to put rivets and glue in because we don't want any vibration, which isn't a complaint you really hear about that much at all. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard about it from people. And as a result, you can't repair the device at all. So there are things like this that makes Apple this company that, in my opinion, is so close to having the nearest thing we could call a perfect operating system hardware combination, that their own greed and stupid decisions ruin it and make this situation, even making these videos where I have this visceral reaction on one side and then these people who love Apple on the other side. There is no in between. And the people who are mad, the people who are really angry about what Apple is doing, they're right to be mad. There are so many things that Apple purposefully does that makes it such a difficult thing to enjoy if you're actually a tech-minded individual, not somebody who just goes out there and buys whatever's popular, but somebody who understands technology, understands how to build computers. When you look at it, you realize that Apple has done so many things to ruin what otherwise would literally be the perfect operating system and hardware combination on the market. And that's what I'm going to get into in this video. I'm going to tell you right now, this video is going to be long. I'm going to go on rants. So if you don't want to hear it, go somewhere else and watch the other video where they just, like someone who's just like, oh, Apple, look, it's shiny, it's pretty. And you go, oh yeah, I want to spend $3,200 on it. If you're looking for that, this isn't your video, but I'm going to give you the brutal honesty, because there's a lot of great things here in Apple that some people haven't even looked at or don't even understand. And there's also some terrible things that Apple needs to fix. And hopefully someone from Apple, maybe a random engineer, random salesperson that's got a friend in engineering, will see this and go, hey, maybe we need to make some changes. So I did my videos. If you haven't watched them, on Mac OS, I've shown you some of the features of the hardware and things where I go into more details. Mac OS, I'm going to cover real quickly and just say this. It's a beautiful operating system. I've seen some people recently trying to be edgy, like, Mac looks like crap. I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know what they put in their drink. Mac is gorgeous. It's beautiful to boot into. It's very easy to utilize. It does have some odd structures to it with the way that they do deal with applications and the way they sandbox them with their ejection model that they have. So you get random icons on your desktop after an install that you need to eject for them to go away. Some of the file placement, some of the things they hide from you in the Finder. But all in all, like any other operating system, once you learn it, this particular one, Apple, is very well laid out. In addition, convergence that they have with their products is so well done within the operating system, being able to use iPad as a second screen, your ability to utilize things like parallels and the multi-touch combination, allowing you to seemingly switch between two different operating systems so easily on that beautiful glass trackpad. If you have one of those, just kind of brings you into this gorgeous, amazing experience that is Mac OS. It has fantastic shortcuts. It has some great tiling, although you have to add in some additional programs to really get the tiling to the next level. But a lot of the things that I kind of thought were Linux only features, Mac has, and that was pretty cool. When you go into the terminal, you add in things like Homebrew. You get the ability to use things like htop, obviously all your SSH and all those other commands you may be familiar with. If you are a tech guru in Linux world, you'll be able to utilize right away in the Apple ecosystem as well, which is pretty awesome in addition. So Mac OS for me is a fantastic operating system. I love the latest version that they have split out the operating system from the user files. This is one of the big advantages we used to talk about a lot in Linux, that, you know, if a virus got to your user files or just got to your operating system, it couldn't jump between the two. So they put a lot more security and privacy in there. As far as open source apps, every app that I use on a daily basis, I was able to install those open source apps within Apple. So yes, you do get a little pop-up and you have to give it permissions because it's not a signed or verified Apple app, but it's 2 clicks. It's no big deal. And I was able to install those. So Mac OS, definitely, absolutely loved it. And there was something about being in the Mac OS with the cleanliness of the menu system and the file system and everything that just made you want to get to work, and it gets out of your way. And so I think they nailed that. Now, in the Linux world, it would probably, to me, most closely resemble GNOME. A lot of people like to say that Mac OS is kind of like elementary, and elementary people hate when you ever mention that, but because they hate it, I wanted to put it in this video. I'm teasing. But I think GNOME's probably one of the closer ones, and it runs, you know, very, very well. A lot of similarities with workspaces and things like that Apple has, and a lot of beauty and simplicity. Although where GNOME fails, where Apple doesn't, is the fact that in GNOME you have to add in all these extensions to be able to get things like a, you know, launcher at the bottom, be able to see what windows you have open. Close windows is obnoxious, minimizing and maximizing in GNOME, whereas Mac kind of has all of that figured out. So I would say it most closely resembles there, but there are certainly desktops within the Linux ecosystem that are far more customizable. But I love Mac OS. I'm not going to lie to you. I think it's fantastic, and there are some things they could do to improve it, but what operating system, what desktop experience can we not say that about? So now I'm going to skip ahead, and we're going to talk about some of the hardware itself. As you know, I played with the MacBook Air, which I think is an amazing machine. It's actually one of the ones on iFixit that gets a 4 out of 10 versus the 1 out of 10 that the MacBook Pro line gets because of all the rivets and glue and other stupid decisions that Apple made with that. So the MacBook Air, if you're going to buy one of their laptops, is actually the better buy. Also, which I'll show you in some of these Reddit threads and things, MacBook has a plague of issues with throttling and heat problems and all of this stuff that should not exist in a $3,000 computer. Because remember when I said earlier that they surround all of their components with, they put all of these high quality components in their machines. What they don't know how to do, what their engineers can't figure out, I guess maybe the glue is stifling their ability to create proper heat sinks and proper fans. It's really not that. It's their just obsession with making things thinner, even when the technology isn't there to do so. Even when it costs you performance, they're going to try to make it thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner, Well, the MacBook Air is very thin, but on the MacBook Air, you're not doing heavy rendering. You're not doing heavy gaming. That's not the expectation for this device. It's all about portability, so you don't notice it as much. Plus, it's got an i3 in it versus an i9 and some of the MacBook Pros and things. So you're not getting that heat buildup that you would have with Intel's. Now, I'm very excited about Mac's moving to ARM. I think this is going to help them in a big way have the technology finally keep up with how thin they want things, because you're not going to have to worry about the heat dissipation issues as much when you're using the big little architecture of ARM, and you can basically turn things on and off so that it's a little easier to dissipate the heat. Plus, you're on a 7 nanometer or even less infrastructure. So in any case, MacBook Air, the Magic Keyboard makes it. I did not realize what people were talking about between the Butterfly and Magic Keyboard until I got a Magic Keyboard. It is magic. It's beautiful to type on. The feeling of this laptop, the aluminum, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's very thin. It's very fast. It's very responsive. I like everything about the MacBook Air. They could do some work here on the repairability scale to get this up with other laptops that are also thin, Dell XPSs. They could also do some work on thinning out the bezel some more. But the trackpad, the giant glass trackpad, the keyboard itself, the fingerprint reader is so convenient. I mean, it just gets you into apps so quickly. I really like everything about the MacBook Air. It has fantastic speakers. It has a beautiful screen. It's backlit. There's really not a lot that I can say bad about the MacBook Air, because it's portability and it's supposed to be super thin, and that's the whole goal of it. It makes sense that it may be a little less repairable, although, again, this is the higher one on their scale of devices. So if you're going to buy a Apple product right now, this would be the only one that I can honestly recommend, and it's the only one I'm actually going to keep in my collection because I enjoyed it that much. Next, we're going to talk about the 2020 Mac Mini. Well, they really didn't update the Mac Mini except give it a little more storage. I wanted to love this device so bad. Number one, you can actually get inside of it and upgrade the RAM. I show that in a video. Unfortunately, you can't upgrade the storage on this, but because it has all those Thunderbolt 3 connections, you can add additional storage. You can also add an eGPU to it, which I did. This is such a great little device. I could totally see this becoming a premium product that gets a lot of the market into Apple products, except for the fact that overheating and throttling is a major issue. The top of this device would get over 112 degrees. It is just, I mean, if that is at the point where, and I found this on Google because who knows this stuff off the top of their head. I'm not a doctor. If you laid your hand on there and left it long enough, you would start getting burns on your hand. That's how hot this thing would get. And it would get that hot doing things like being in Zoom and just recording a video. Obviously, gaming, throw that out the door when you got the eGPU and things. If you get an hour into it, massive throttling, massive heat issues. It only had one fan at the bottom. Compare that with the Intel Nook, which has got the two fans and just a much better packed and engineered cooling solution for the processor than the Mac Mini does here. So it's a fantastic concept. It's larger than the Intel Nook, so this wasn't a size thing. It looks more beautiful and elegant, I would say, than the Intel Nook. Not as cool, because the Intel Nook's got the skull and things on it, but it looks more elegant and beautiful. But what a waste that they could not add another fan in there and do something better with the cooling and allow you to upgrade the storage with a simple NVMe drive in there. It would make nearly a perfect Apple experience. Unfortunately, because of their heat issues, I would avoid right now. But again, once they go ARM, maybe something to retake a look at. I wanted to talk about the iMac, even though I didn't get one for this 30-day experience, specifically because this shows that there is an old school engineer somewhere in Apple that is a brilliant genius that unfortunately the designers or the suits or whatever won't unleash them to make the next iMac. And as a result, they're being held back from what would otherwise be this amazing product. iMac has a slot in the back that allows you to do things like, well, let me just show you. In the service manual, there's a slot right here you can see in the back that you just pop off, and this allows you to get directly to the RAM. This is repairability. This is caring about your consumers. This is making it so that you have a product that doesn't become forced obsolete. You don't force obsolescence on them. They can get in there, they can upgrade the hard drive, upgrade the RAM, and those processors will be good for 4 or 5 more years. And in the life of this machine, you'd be having 10, 12 years out of that. And that makes Apple cringe because they're like, no, we want to be able to get more of your money, even though we're the richest tech company in the world. But somebody designed this, and this is brilliant, right? You could walk your grandmother through opening this door and upgrading the RAM on this machine. Why you can't do that with the storage and things is a mystery, because they basically allowed that engineer to do that one amazing cool thing and then kick them out. Now, you used to be able to get into these iMacs with some screws around the screen and pull the frame off, and it was pretty easy. Now, guess what they did? They glued it together because, waterproofing, in case you ever want to take your iMac into the tub. They glued it together, and you have to use all these special devices and equipment to try to cut away the edges. But, you got to have this special wedge here. You can't cut in this 3-inch zone near the webcam or you'll destroy it. And you got to make sure you don't accidentally crack the screen because it's very bendy. It's a terribly long repair process. And you're going to have to replace all the adhesive, and you're probably, if you do this yourself, not going to be able to get it to ever fit perfectly back the way it was originally as you cut away all the adhesive and things, and all of that just to get to their spinning disk, which just today in recording this video, they finally have iMacs with an SSD in them. Yes, they were still stuck on the spinning disk. And once you do that, you can finally drop that down and get to that spinning disk and change it out. Why couldn't you just put a slot in the back, especially now that you're moving to SSD, or even better, NVMe M2 drive, and just pop that in there and allow a little slot you pop open. You could switch it out yourself. It would be great. Now, a lot of people say these devices, let's take a look here, are completely overpriced. Apple gets a reputation, and some of it deservedly so, for being ridiculously overpriced. But I actually think these devices are priced very well. And I'll show you why. Number one, you're getting a 5K screen. So I don't have a 5K screen. I have two 2K screens. 5K screen, pretty impressive at 27 inches. The problem with these devices and what makes them difficult to sell to people is the upgradability is only there left with the RAM. You can't upgrade the storage, and you can see your one that's $1,799 comes with only 256 gigabytes of storage. Like, that's phone storage today, people. That's not for a desktop machine. That's ridiculous. However, if I just went into Newegg here for fun and tried to make a machine, look, it came with a free gift of World of Warcraft, that mimics this really cheap case, which obviously the all-in-one's beautiful because there is no all-in-one that I'm aware of outside of Apple that's 5K. A 5K screen at $990, and this is one of the cheaper ones on the 5K screen. I didn't go super expensive here. Your power supply, your motherboard, the 8 gigabytes of RAM this comes with, the 5500 XT I had to throw in there because I couldn't find what did they throw in this? The Radeon Pro 5300. And I couldn't get it anywhere near that price, right? I'm still here at 1825. Even if you remove the GPU here, which I know is an upgrade over it, it's still 1624 in comparison to their 1799. That would be with no video card. So I don't think this is necessarily overpriced, although some of the equipment, they're putting 8 gigabytes of RAM today in a desktop at $1,700. I mean, come on. So now you're in the $1,900 and $2,200 range. And this is what they do. Well, at least you get the 5500 XT here in the $2,299 version. You still get the measly, worthless 8 gigabytes of RAM, but they finally put a 512 gigabyte, which is still too small. I think they should have a terabyte in here easily. But I don't think this is insanely overpriced. I think that it's a slight premium, but you got the Thunderbolt 3 ports. You can add external storage to it. It's not a terrible deal at all. What makes it a terrible deal is, again, the inability to repair it. So if you're going to have to take this into an Apple shop, and I've been following the Apple Reddit forums and the iMac Reddit forums and listening to people who are these Apple fanboys through and through, just complaining about store managers not repairing their devices that are still in warranty, or telling them that their device is unrepairable, or upselling them the entire time. So it's not like they used to be where it's like, well, if you go into Apple, you just get this incredible experience. They kind of scaled back in some ways, at least depending on the location, on some of their customer service, and they're charging a premium, and you can't repair it. Apple, you are just so close if you would get whatever obnoxious nut job is in your company making these decisions about repairability and keeping people from repairing stuff. You could really have something even more amazing on your hands. And I know it's like, well, they're already the richest tech company in the world. So I guess it's working. I mean, who am I? I guess you just make products that nobody can repair that go into a waste bin when they break, and you still get to be the richest company in the world. So there you go. So now moving on, I did not get a MacBook Pro 2019. I got a MacBook Pro 2016, which did not have the Magic Keyboard, which is why I know that the Magic Keyboard on the Air is so amazing. But I was never going to spend my money on a MacBook Pro 16-inch 2019 because of the ridiculously terrible decisions that they made with this device. They not only solder on your memory, your RAM, your flash storage, all to the logic board, they use glue and rivets. Rivets. Let me show you. I had to pull this up. These are what rivets are. Once a rivet goes in, drives in, and compresses, it is nearly impossible to get out. In fact, I looked up how do you remove rivets. Like my dad had a rivet gun. He worked on a construction site, and I remember seeing these things go in, and they're not meant to come out. I mean, they use them in airplanes and things. You got to cut off the head. You got to hammer it out. You got to try to drill it out. They basically make it as ridiculously impossible to get into this thing as humanly possible for no advantage at all, except to basically get one over on the consumer. So frustrating. The Touch ID sensor is the power switch and is locked to the logic board, greatly complicating repairs. It's such a disaster. Stay so far away from a MacBook Pro 2019 here. This thing, if it ever has any problems out of warranty, you're done. Like, you're going to be spending more money than the thing's worth trying to get it repaired. If you have one, sell it now while it's still working and get something else. It's a disaster. In fact, there's only one thing worse than the MacBook Pro rated here. I saw it and I couldn't believe it. It was the Microsoft Surface laptop actually got a 0. So again, Mac's not the only one doing this stuff, but they're well known, and you could see Dells, Acers, 8s, 9s, 10s here in repairability, meaning you can get to everything. And these devices, if you've not played with a new Dell XPS or some of the new Lenovo lines, let me tell you something. They have copied the best parts of MacBooks, but also made them repairable. There are a few exceptions to that. I think Dell has one, so you need to look, where they soldered on a lot of the RAM and things to it, trying to take a page out of MacBooks. But there are other ones they have out there with their infinity screen. Just beautiful. So one of the things that I heard in a Apple repair enthusiast discussion was the Apple just cares about you and they don't want you to hurt yourself. So I spent a bunch of time, that's why they don't want you to repair the devices, trying to find out how many deaths a year are caused from computer repair. Now, I myself have been repairing computers since I was 12 years old in my dad's shop. So I've repaired thousands of computers over the years and have never contained a serious injury, although I will tell you the edges in some cases are like razors and will definitely cut you, and it really hurts, but nothing that a Band-Aid can't fix. Unfortunately, I was unable to find any deaths related to computer repair. I'm sure one or two people might have touched a power supply or done something stupid in there. But besides hurting your arm from using your computer too much, or some eye strain, or injuries from batteries exploding or something like that, I couldn't find anything where people are dying in mass that Apple is just showing compassion for us by continuing to keep people from repairing their computers. I do want to mention the Apple has a big issue being in anti-competitive practices. A lot of people saying even Proton Mail is a company I absolutely love and adore for privacy-focused email, saying they're finally coming out talking about their Apple's anti-competitive practices, extorting developers, and they apparently had something similar happen to themselves where they call it the Apple tax, where they're taking 30% of all profits and services from anybody that puts up in their store. I know people will argue this both ways from Sunday, saying, well, you know, Apple has a better curated store than Android, which I absolutely agree. But, you know, obviously a lot of the people who are developing applications which are important to Apple's ecosystem, iOS would never taken off if it wasn't for those developers making apps so that they could have as many apps as the Android store. Apple would have died have those developers not gone there and done that. They should probably really be taking a good look internally and figuring out how to fix that without having to have government interference in order to do it for them. This is just an example. Again, this is somebody 7 hours ago who bought a brand new 2019 MacBook Pro. Didn't take my advice. They couldn't have because the video's not out yet. But they'll be thinking about it now if they watch this. But this Redditor here, they basically said, hey, I bought this really expensive Mac with a 5600M. It's got an i9, 32 gigabytes of RAM. I mean, they must have spent $3,200 plus for this thing, talking about the thing throttling constantly and saying that a lot of the people doing video reviews, you know, those popular tech channels that get all this stuff for free, I have to buy it with my own money. So you actually get an honest review. But all these people who get all this stuff for free, saying they only show 15 minutes of gaming and show getting 100 frames per second in Fortnite on the new Mac Pro. But again, because of their obsession with getting in an atom thinner, they do not have proper cooling on the devices. And because it doesn't have proper cooling, what happens is you get that initial 100 frames per second, then it drops down to 45. And basically the machine's just constantly throttling itself, trying to figure out a way to dissipate the heat, and it can't until you quit out the game and let it rest, which, by the way, one of the things that's most destructive for computer devices is heat. So even though the device is still working after that, and you might go 40 frames per second is fine, or if you're rendering a video, you're going to have the same problem. You are killing the components inside by constantly having them at this exhaustive throttling heat point. So it's just bad all the way around. And again, ARM may fix this, but when you pair this with a 5600M and an i9 and the RAM and the drives all producing heat inside this machine that they want to make paper thin so you can cut your peanut butter sandwich with it, it just creates a perfect disaster. They, again, put design over functionality, and they put design over repairability, and this is where Apple falters. Just another example of a device that they created here, the iPhone 11, in which if you crack the rear camera on it, they've made it in such a way where it cannot be repaired, not by Apple, not by anybody. So they're making this devices, and they're actually hurting themselves. And speaking of which, the poor repair technicians that have to fix this stuff, I feel so bad for them, because you're talking about making people sick using glue dissolvents and everything else to get batteries out, a disposable component that you know is going to fail. They're the ones who are having to use the glue dissolvers in the back rooms with face masks on and gloves and everything else in order to get a stupid battery out. Now, I will tell you that they have, in the recent MacBooks, fixed that with some sticky, like 3M looking tape. But then when they rivet everything else in, it's still the same disaster. But they did at least improve the battery part, probably complaints from their own technicians that finally drove that one over the edge. I want to mention as well, you're spending all this fantastic money, but 2016, they have things called FlexGate and stuff where Apple created cables that were too small that if you opened and closed the MacBook too much, it snapped that cable off. They've since repaired that in their future ones, but they also had display issues where it was lighting uneven and things. So, and this was a massive issue that happened with the 2016 MacBooks. And while I think they may have gotten sued, or there was a lawsuit, I'm not sure, that resulted from it. Eventually, they did go and fix some of them, but I see reports of people saying they have these MacBooks with these issues and their stores are refusing to fix it. So I guess it just depends on which store you go to. The point of all of this is to say repairability is not something you can turn your back on. It's not something you can excuse. No matter how beautiful these Apple devices are, no matter how fantastic Mac OS is, this is just something that until they fix it, you should be voting with your money and not buying this stuff. Your friend, your tech geek friend, your neighbor, whoever you go to get your computer repairs done are not going to touch these things with a 10-foot pole. And if they are, it's still going to cost you an arm and a leg because of all the work that has to go through in order to repair these. You would be much better off with a different computer. But that's where we are with Apple today. Okay, and this one I just could not let go. I had to go back and add this back in the video. I nearly missed it, but this Reddit post, when I saw it, made me want to punch myself in the face. It says here, aren't battery replacements on that a nightmare? Somebody who got a brand new MacBook Pro. And the person replies, Ferrari owners, don't worry about the next tire change. You've got to be kidding me. What a buckethead. So here's the thing. Number one, Everybody I know that actually has money is frugal with their money. That's one of the ways they got their money. So yes, they do actually worry about their next tire change and getting something that's a complete ripoff. But indeed, a Ferrari owner probably has enough money that the concerns over the cost of a tire aren't that important. But here's the thing, the key point you're missing there is that Ferrari doesn't solder on and glue the tires to the car so that nobody else can change them and the entire car is worthless once they go bad. That's the key difference, you buckethead. In any case, let's get back to the rest of the video. So here are my final thoughts. Apple makes an amazing operating system. They make devices that are so beautiful. Most manufacturers out there have copied their unibody design in one way or another and incorporated it. They do have a reputation for overcharging, but honestly, in a lot of ways, I could easily excuse that because so many other manufacturers surround and put cheap junk parts around a really good processor just because they know you don't understand anything other than, does it have an Intel inside or has it got an AMD Ryzen? And so they surround it with other junk and the things are slow. You got crap speakers, crap keyboard, crap trackpad. But Apple computer, when you get one, the physical hardware itself is just gorgeous. The trackpad's amazing. They put good hardware inside. They just don't know how to dissipate heat. And they also have no idea on how to make a device repairable. Well, they know exactly how to do it. They show it in some ways with things like the iMac slot in the back. They just refuse to do so that they could, I guess, treat their customers, people who are spending this premium on their devices, even worse. And that's the shame of it all. So if you were thinking about buying an Apple computer, at this point, I would wait to see what happens with how ARM is going to play and if Apple will wake up from their disastrous stance on repairability. I think that Apple has an ability to be even far bigger and create a far larger fan base than ever before out of tech enthusiasts like myself and others who are far bigger than me out there who will not buy Macs or recommend Macs because of things like the repairability is one of the key features there. I also would like to see Apple spend a lot more time donating in open source. Now, I did do a video and showed that they do a lot more than people probably realized, but open source is very important to doing things like closing the digital divide and creating standards so that companies aren't all off going doing their own thing and the consumers are left to suffer for that. So I think Apple, with the amount of money that they're making, certainly could donate more to the open source ecosystem. And I think that they make a fantastic partner with Linux versus Windows and WSL. If we could get rid of that and work with Apple, that would make me happier because this, to me, their focus on privacy and things, even though it's not perfect, it's far from perfect, is far more impressive than what you see in the Google world and Microsoft world, in my opinion. So where do I go from here? Well, System 76. I think if there's any company out there in the Linux ecosystem that, first of all, the devices within Linux, because you can pick your device that you want and put Linux on it, but now Dell and Lenovo and others have laptops they're selling with Linux pre-installed. Linux is everywhere. You're welcome, Michael. Linux is taking over. And so if you're not going to buy that Apple and you're like, but what do I get now? Check out System 76. They make, first of all, some of the most beautiful desktop machines on the planet. Look at these colors and wood grain that you can get, that absolute amazing style, elegance that a lot of people expect from an Apple computer, but this is a completely different, non-copied style of their own elegance with this wood grain that they did here. It's just a fantastic computer. You're going to pay that premium. So if you like Apple and spending tons of money, guess what? You could do that here too, except you're going to get a ton more power for it. You're going to get a ton more value for your money going to System 76. And no, they're not a sponsor of mine. They're not paying me for this. I do love their products though. And they also have laptops here. Their laptops are Clevo, but they are redesigned and structured inside to work perfect with things like Core Boot and stuff with Linux. You can also get super powerful machines here, thin machines. You can get some that are have desktop processors in them like their workstations, or you can get super powerful desktop replacement like devices, laptops here with NVIDIA, 10th gen, 64 gigs of RAM, all of this stuff. Thin, powerful, fully repairable. You don't see any rivets in here. You don't see any solder. The battery can come out with a few screws. This is what I'm talking about here. Thin bezel. You can get a very beautiful display. Any display you want to go along with them is an external display, but you can get a very nice display that comes in the laptop standard. Backlit keyboard. I don't think the trackpads and the keyboard are as nice as a Magic keyboard or a glass trackpad in a MacBook Pro. I don't have the brand new device here, the Oryx Pro, but I do have the new Lemur Pro, and it's a very thin plastic-based device, but quality, no flex and all of that stuff, and very beautiful. But the trackpad experience obviously is something to be desired from the Apple ecosystem that's not here, but it's a small price to pay for being able to repair your own computer, which is a big deal. They're also working on manufacturing their own keyboard line and everything else. So my answer to you, if you're in the Apple ecosystem, if you're thinking about buying Apple, instead of going that route, become a true geek, fill your brains, use Linux, buy a System 76 laptop. You're going to have a much better experience with a device that you can actually repair, your friends can repair, that's going to last you a really long time, really good value for your money overall. You get a lot of premium components in there. You get amazing customer support from them. They're a local company as well in Colorado, not to me, but local in Colorado, in the US. Just absolutely a great company. We've had them on to interview them on Destination Linux, so check that out. So I told you this video was going to be long because I had a lot to say. I planned to do a bunch more videos, but nobody wanted to hear it. Well, very few people wanted to hear it. People have this visceral reaction to Apple. So I'm closing out on this. I'm going to keep the MacBook Air. I'm very excited to see what Apple does with the ARM devices. I really hope they fix the repairability issue. Mac OS is, I love it, beautiful. But if I was to tell you what computer do you buy right now today, I would be heading to System 76's website instead, where you get a developer-friendly, focused operating system, Pop OS. You get the beauty of having a device that you can repair, and there's just far better options out there right now. And if you want a mini, I would go with the Intel Nook. The Meerkat is okay. It doesn't have the Thunderbolt 3 support, I don't think. Okay, I was correct. Does not have the Thunderbolt 3 support, so that's why it's out for me, because you can't add things like an eGPU in there. So that's why I wouldn't go with the Meerkat. I'd go with the Intel Nook, which I have videos on out there instead if you're looking for something like that. If we're talking about the all-in-one here, again, I would wait for the ARM devices to come out and see if they add some repairability in there. So that's my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave your comments below and let me know what you think. If you've enjoyed this series, please let me know. Give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. If you didn't enjoy the series, tell me why. Why is it not okay to go look at other ecosystems? In fact, don't tell me why. I don't really care. And then if you want to leave your comments about some of the hardware and things that you've explored, or maybe some of the reasons, because you're a fanboy of Apple, that you think it's okay that you don't repair devices and you can't repair them, and forced obsolescence and all that stuff, let me know. I'd be interested in knowing in the comments. But either way, the most important thing you can do out there right now is get out there and fill your brains.
Don't forget to subscribe! And make them if you like this video.